this hire, this guy from Wake Forest, it sounds like he spent some time at Bowling Green at K-State. Well, that's a good name for that role. It's the type of name, and I know you want to provide some insight on Wake Forest that a lot of Hawkeye fans probably aren't familiar with, but it's a type of guy that I would expect the higher Power Four programs in the country to be seeking the services of right now. I mean, these are the typical. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, 2021 was record setting. I'm sure we'll talk about that year with Sam Hartman, et cetera. But he did some impressive things at all three of those schools, and it'll be interesting. I'm assuming this is all Tim Lester. I mean, there are connections here between Tim and the new guy, Warren, and so I'm assuming this is a Tim Lester hire. Kudos to him for somehow landing him, and now you got to wonder. you know what my next thought is, Mark? My next thought is this. What is when you texted me about this news initially? So we know the qualifications. I know you're going to run through them, but I'll tell you where my mind's at right now. They brought John Budmeyer in. Budmeyer had been the OC at Colorado State. Not a good one, by the way. The numbers didn't suggest he was a good one. He did have some success as a quarterbacks coach at Wisconsin. To bring him in as an analyst, he then later gets promoted to wide receivers coach. Warren Ruggiero, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, has a substantially better. It's not even in the same stratosphere as Budmeyer. They're bringing him in to be an analyst. So a couple thoughts. A, big win there. But B, is this a 1-year stepping stone for a young coach who's got a lot of good years in front of him? My guess is that it is. Like I say, I'm surprised that he's there now. I also wonder if, I don't know the contractual things here with Ruggiero. I'll be honest, I've been tied up a lot of the day, and so I've not dug as deep as I'm sure some media people have. But assuming he's locked in for a year, which I don't think we can assume that, if John Budmeyer struggles this year, or hey, maybe they promote him to a wide receivers coach next season, I have a hard time believing somebody with his type of a resume will be on the market for that. I would think. I'm surprised he doesn't have, and maybe he did, but he turned him down. But I'm surprised he's not going to coach somewhere else as the offensive coordinator, or at the very least, a quarterback coaching role at a major school. So I don't know what it means. Maybe this means that Kirk is going to, I see the comment in the Chev Yoda in the chat. Lester to head coach, Ruggiero to OC when Kirk hangs it up at the end of the year. So there's going to be some theories tossed around. But on face value, this is a really good hire.
Yeah, sometimes the timing just doesn't work out, especially in the coaching circuit, where maybe he got a few offers or a few contacts, and he could have pursued some things, or maybe he did pursue some things and just he finished second a few times, or maybe a few things just didn't line up, or it wasn't a good fit for him. And here we are now nearing spring football, and there aren't many coaching vacancies across the country. Most of those are just because somebody has found an NFL spot here and there, like, of course, Liddell Betts, just here in the last 10 days or so. And so my initial reaction was, I saw the name, and I instantly went to, okay, he's the Wake Forest offensive coordinator. Therefore, he has done some good things. I knew that he had been there for a while. I did not realize until we looked into it, 2014. I know that this isn't uncommon to Iowa football fans, but this is fairly uncommon across the nation for a guy to stick around with a head coach for 11 seasons. That's a long tenure as a coordinator. I think that speaks well of him. I'm not saying it from a derogatory standpoint that he could have done better and moved on. I say it more from the standpoint of the consistency and the dedication to the program. And Dave Clawson, who stepped down following this season, was certainly considered one of the better coaches in college football, despite, being at a disadvantage at Wake Forest. But my goodness, I initially thought, yes, longevity. And I thought the production at Wake Forest when Sam Hartman was there in particular. Go, anyone who's a stats nerd, do two things. Go to Wake Forest like circa 2015. That will look much like the Iowa offense. You will see off if you go from box score to box score through like 2015, 16, you will see early in his tenure, you will see them struggling to score points and to produce yardage. Obviously, coaches need players. And once they got hold of Sam Hartman in particular, they did have a quarterback. I'll be able to come up with his name in a minute. He produced. So it wasn't just Sam Hartman. The quarterback prior to Hartman, his name's escaping me right now. He had a breakout season under, we're going to go with your pronunciation, Ruggiero. And he had I can't believe he was like a 3-year starter there. And his numbers just, it's ridiculous. I'm going to look him up here in a second. His numbers went from like Deacon Hill-esque to like he's firing like 32 touchdowns his final season there before Hartman. Then Hartman steps in. My goodness, I said this a number of times, Corey, in talking about Wake Forest football when it came up, which of course, even on the national scene, we're not talking Wake Forest much. However, this team was so prolific and they did go to an ACC championship game in 2021 that you have to talk about them to a certain extent. That I don't know that there was a team in college football during about a 3-year stretch that relied on passing game more than anything else on the field and basically would have been a 3 or 4 win team without a prolific quarterback. But let's understand, not prolific to the degree that he had the talent to be some first rounder in the NFL. Sam Hartman is not that guy. It was more about scheme, timing, concepts, and basically Sam Hartman and 3 receivers got them 11 wins and got them 8 wins in another season. This just impresses me as a hire, as you just stated.
I thought he was younger than this. I'm just looking this up. He's 58, so I'm a little surprised by that. I think he kind of looks like a young 58 to me. But regardless, for people that don't understand how this works, and this was the case when John Budmeyer jumped aboard as well, although again, he was not coming from a high-profile job, but this allows him freedom to go somewhere else and not enter into a contract that with a program that he's not excited about. So, yeah, Iowa's got a spot open as the running backs coach. That's why I was kind of joking about him filling the wide receiving coach duties because, like I say, I would think he's already had opportunities to be a coordinator somewhere, and apparently he either doesn't want that or he's getting, I don't know what the contractual, what kind of contract he was under at Wake Forest, assuming he's still getting paid. So it's kind of like the Budmeyer thing. Remember, he was getting paid during the year that he coached, analyzed at Iowa. Mark, does that make sense? Am I making sense on that? So he may
Sure.
not have the freedom to go get another job unless he wants to sacrifice whatever salary he had left at Wake Forest. I do question, this happens everywhere. It happened with Paul Chryst last year. Remember, Iowa offered Paul Chryst the job, and he sat on it, and eventually turned it down, ended up being an analyst at Texas and leading the college football playoff. And I don't think Paul Chryst has gotten hired anywhere, has he?
I've not heard. I don't think so.
So that's my point. Like this, I mean, he could end up sitting at Iowa for a while on this job. I wonder, because it happens everywhere, it doesn't worry me, but you do wonder like how much motivation does a guy like this, who has a really good extensive resume, Mark, how much motivation does he really have to give it his all? I mean, I don't know. It's Tim Lester's offense. If Iowa really looks good this year, yeah, it's a good reflection on him, but he's got his resume built. That's why I say if he somehow, without knowing exactly what his job agreement entails, whether he's locked into a 1-year contract, I don't believe he is, because if it's built anywhere like the John Budmeyer situation, he's not getting paid, and that's part of why he's accepting this role, to stay in the coaching circle, continue to be someone who's on the national scale, but continue to get paid by Wake is my assumption there. but he could probably leave at any point. So it's rare that you're going to have head coaching or offensive coordinating jobs opening up in the summer or early fall. There's always a possibility of that happening. We saw what happened with Pat Fitzgerald, Northwestern, August, as their season was starting. So there's always an opportunity for a late change, and maybe he ends up going somewhere. But it's likely they get him for 25, and I'm sure he's going to add in some different concepts. I know Lester and he went up against one another when Lester was at Syracuse as the offensive coordinator, and Ruggiero was at Wake Forest. It's funny how things come full circle because Iowa's done a nice job. I don't want to say poaching South Dakota State because their head coach, Jimmy Rogers, took the Wazoo job. But the whole reason why Iowa was able to nab Hawthorne, and I shouldn't say the whole reason for Gronowski because they were interested in him but even before Jimmy Rogers left. But they get these guys that enter the portal after their head coach left for Wazoo. And the whole reason he left for Wazoo is because Wazoo's coach left for Wake Forest, which is why Ruggiero doesn't have a job, and now he's at Iowa. It's just funny how it goes full circle in every part of the country, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it just to see what it does to the passing game at the very least. And my question is, how much does he fit in with Gronowski's arm? My guess is he fits in really well because I think my understanding is he ran a lot of RPO at Wake. And you brought up Sam Hartman. I'd be curious to compare Sam Hartman, and obviously he was prolific in 21. I'm not trying to compare apples to apples here, but his style of play, he's about the same size as a Gronowski, probably more mobile than Mark is. Who knows how Mark's going to look coming off what?
I would go Gronowski, right? Isn't he supposed to be pretty mobile?
He's mobile, but I mean, I think I could be wrong on that. Maybe they're about the same mobility wise.
Gronowski.
Gronowski's more mobile than Cade, but Gronowski's not. Brandon Sullivan is more mobile than Gronowski.
Sam Hartman's not mobile.
All right. Well, I haven't watched enough Sam Hartman
football. I'll go Gronowski on that comparison. Oh, look at the prior quarterback. So, Cheviota, sorry that I did not check out your comment. You nailed it on John Wolford. I've said the guy's name 1,000 times in my life. Couldn't come up with it. Look at this senior season. Like, he just explodes. 29 touchdowns, 6 picks, 64%.
Yeah, I mean, so how much credit do you get? I mean, did something else? That'd be my question, right? He was there since 2014. Why was there such suckish quarterback play for so long? You said, well, they finally got players, but
yeah, they finally got players.
There's other factors at play, right? There's other factors, other hires at play. He was the offensive coordinator during that time. Who was Wake Forest's head coach during that stretch? It's the same guy.
Dave Clawson.
Yeah. That's right. So Dave Clawson is an offensive mind or a defensive mind?
It's a good question. I've only known him as a head coach. I don't know what his background is.
Let's see here. Looks like Dave Clawson was a defensive guy. So, although he was an OC at Tennessee, but he played DB in college himself. So, yeah, I don't know. He looks like he's coached both sides of the ball, primarily offense, though. So, I guess my question is, how much of that offense was Wake Forest? Was Wake Forest was Dave Clawson? How much of it was this guy? That's put it very simply for people.
Sure. That. Yeah, and we do see that all over the place where if a particular head coach is known for something and the offensive or defensive coordinator, it's usually the offensive coordinator is just kind of a fill-in, just kind of a support to what is really the head coach's offense. Now, I don't believe that to be the case here, but there's Sam Hartman.
Now, so
forget the Notre Dame year.
They broke records
last 2 years, 39, 38 touchdown passes.
So they broke records in 31, but not in 20, or excuse me, in 21, but not in 22. That's interesting. But I did see that they were the only ACC team to average 30 plus points for like 6 straight seasons, from like 17 to 22, until they lost Hartman. The only ACC team that includes, Miami, Clemson, Florida State.
Yeah.
North Carolina.
He did it with 2 different quarterbacks here.
North Carolina's had some good offenses. They
Yes.
haven't played a lick of defense, but they could score points. So that's
Yeah.
an impressive stat. The ACC is a good offensive league. Would you agree?
Yes. There were a couple of years here very recently that I thought it was the best quarterback league in America.
Yeah, I could see that. So I'm anxious to see how, like I say, what kind of concepts he brings in and what Kirk is comfortable with. And then obviously the second you like that, don't you? The second part of this is who does Iowa hire as running backs coach? I've heard nothing. Again, there might be people who are, you know, I don't know. I don't trying to sneak into Kirk's office when he goes to the bathroom to check his phone to see who he's talking to. I'm not that invested in it. I don't. I'll just wait and hear, when it happens. But I'll be interested to see how the concepts kind of mesh together. No pun intended, because I think you're going to see more mesh concepts. And you like that? You like that too, didn't you, Mark?
I like that
So
too. I did not. I failed to bring up the mesh concept because I don't know where that originated either. I don't know if that's a Ruggiero special that
yeah.
he schemed up, but that's been what Wake Forest has been known for.
Yeah, this is your show too. You need to you're more of an authority on this guy than I am. So for fans that would like to know if Iowa was getting a Ruggiero offense, what would it look like? What did it look like under Sam Hartman? They
Well,
obviously ran the ball well because they also controlled the clock.
yes, an authority in comparison, possibly not an
Well,
authority on Wake Forest football. The slow mesh play. It's basically, well, it's contingent on your defensive line or your offensive line to hold blocks for one thing because it's slow developing. It's involving the quarterback to read the end and the the movement by the defensive end and what he's going to do, whether he keeps it or not. And obviously, they passed off of it more than other teams do. Became
yeah,
more of a passing offense.
which Iowa will likely still run the ball more even without
Yeah.
Caleb Johnson. But that's intriguing, and I go right back to my guess is, you correct me if I'm wrong, not an offensive coordinator, not an offensive mind, but I would guess having maybe some slithery speedsters as wideouts in that type of an approach, that type of an offense is even more valuable. So I think about guys like Sam Phillips. Jacob Gill's not small, but he's certainly not big. Seth Anderson, I'd say the same thing about. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Obviously, they've got guys like Terrell Washington Jr. that are super intriguing because of their flexibility, being able to kind of move them in and out of the backfield and do some different things. Maybe like they could have done with Tyrone Tracy had there been a different guy at the helm coaching that offense.